You won't believe what happened when my local HOA tried to strong-arm me into joining their community just so I could use the lake right outside my property. It all started when I noticed some new signs popping up around the lake, saying only HOA members were allowed access. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding, but things quickly escalated. The HOA representatives showed up at my door, insisting that if I wanted to keep enjoying the lake, I had to pay their fees and become an official member now. Here's the thing. The lake has always been part of the natural landscape around my home. I've lived here for years, and no one ever questioned my right to be there. Suddenly being told I had to join a private association to continue using a public natural space felt not just unfair, but downright entitled. The more they pushed, the more frustrated I became. It wasn't just about a lake anymore. It felt like someone was trying to take away something that belonged to me without cause. So I decided to stand my ground. But things didn't end with just a firm no. When the HOA started sending officials to monitor my visits and threaten me with penalties, I knew I had to take action. I called the cops not to start a fight, but to protect my rights and make sure everything stayed peaceful. What happened? Next, well, the situation took an unexpected turn, and it's not what I thought it would be. The HOA's reaction caught me completely off guard, and now I'm left wondering how far they're willing to go. Stick around, because this story isn't over yet, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. The whole situation caught me off guard because I never expected a homeowners association to be so aggressive over something like a lake. Before this all began, I was just living my life, enjoying the quiet mornings by the water, fishing, or taking a little kayak out. The lake wasn't just a spot on the map, it was part of my daily routine, a peaceful retreat that I considered my own piece of nature. I figured, since I wasn't part of the HOA and never paid their fees, I was free to come and go as I pleased. Apparently, that wasn't the case. Digging a little deeper, I learned that the HOA had recently changed their rules, claiming ownership or at least exclusive rights over the lake and the surrounding land. I tried to get some clear answers, but every time I reached out, I got vague responses or flat-out refusals. It felt like they were trying to push me out without giving me a real explanation. What made it worse was hearing stories from neighbors who were quietly paying the fees just to avoid any trouble. But I didn't want to give in so easily. When the HOA representatives showed up at my door, it wasn't just a friendly chat. They made it clear that if I didn't join and pay up, I'd be risking fines or even legal action. I talked about community rules and shared responsibility, but it all felt like a power play. It wasn't about protecting the community. It was about control. That's when I started questioning, how far could an HOA go to enforce rules like these? What kind of authority did they really have over natural spaces that were once free to everyone? And why was this battle over something so simple turning into such a stressful fight? The more I tried to understand, the murkier things became. And just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, something happened that changed everything and made me realize this fight was far from over. As this whole ordeal dragged on, I started noticing other little things that didn't quite add up. The HOA wasn't just targeting me. They were slowly tightening their grip on other parts of the neighborhood too. I heard from a few neighbors that some of them had received notices about mandatory membership or fees for things they never agreed to. It felt like the HOA was using the lake as a test case, trying to assert more control bit by bit and seeing who would push back. Meanwhile, kept wondering about the history behind this lake. Was it really private? Did the HOA have legal grounds to block access? I tried digging through public records and old maps, and what I found made me even more confused. The lake seemed to be on land that wasn't clearly marked as private property, which only made the HOA's demands seem more questionable. But the HOA's representatives dismissed any of my concerns. insisting their rules were final. Adding to the tension, the local cops showed up more than once after I called them. But instead of giving clear support, they seemed unsure about the whole situation. It was like they didn't want to take sides, caught between enforcing the law and respecting the HOA's authority. That uncertainty made me feel even more alone in this fight. Then there was the community itself. Some neighbors sided with the HOA, worried about the upkeep and maintenance costs the lake might bring. Others were quietly sympathetic but afraid to get involved. It felt like the neighborhood was quietly splitting apart, and that was tough to watch. What started as a personal fight over lake access was becoming a bigger issue about control, community, and what people were willing to stand up for. Through it all, I kept asking myself, how far would the HOA go to enforce their rules? Would they push people out completely? And what would happen if I refused to back down? The tension was thick, and the next move felt like it could change everything. As days went by, the situation only grew more intense. The HOA seemed determined to make an example out of me, showing up unannounced near the lake, sometimes with security personnel in tow. It felt like I was under constant watch, and the peaceful spot I once enjoyed had turned into a battleground. I started documenting everything: the visits, the conversations, even the signs they put up threatening fines for trespassing without membership. It wasn't just about the lake anymore. It was about standing up to a group that seemed to think they could control every inch of our neighborhood. At the same time, tensions between neighbors kept rising. Some who had stayed quiet were now whispering about what I was facing, but most were hesitant to get involved. The HOA's influence was strong, and many feared repercussions if they sided with me. I could feel the divide growing deeper, making the neighborhood feel less like a community and more like a war zone where everyone was just trying to protect their own interests. The uncertainty around the legal side of things only made the pressure worse. The cops came back again after another call, but their attitude was different this time, more cautious, almost as if they were waiting for someone else to take the lead. I knew this could blow up into something bigger than just a simple dispute over lake access. It was clear that the HOA wasn't backing down, and neither was I. Then, one afternoon, things reached a boiling point. The HOA showed up with official-looking papers threatening immediate fines and legal action if I didn't comply. Their tone was sharp, and the whole situation felt like it was spiraling out of control fast. I realized this wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was a full-on showdown. But just when I thought I was ready for whatever came next, something unexpected happened that changed everything and pushed this conflict to the edge. Just when I thought I had a handle on the situation and was bracing myself for the HOA's next move, things took a sudden and unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, I received a letter not from the HOA, but from the City Council. At first I thought it might be support or at least some clarity, but instead, it was a notice stating that the lake area was under review for a potential new development project. The letter mentioned plans to build a private clubhouse and other amenities, all tied directly to the HOA's membership fees. This wasn't just about restricting access anymore. It was about changing the entire landscape and turning a natural spot into something completely commercialized. This revelation shocked me and raised the stakes far beyond anything I had imagined. Suddenly, the HOA's push to force people to join made a lot more sense. They weren't just controlling who used the lake. They were trying to sell an exclusive lifestyle tied to it. The quiet fight over the lake had turned into a much bigger battle over the future of our neighborhood and the natural spaces we all cherished. What made it worse was the growing tension in the community. Some neighbors started rallying behind the HOA, excited about the promised upgrades, while others, like me, felt betrayed and worried that what we loved was slipping away. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and the neighborhood that once felt close-knit now felt divided and uncertain at the same time. The HOA ramped up their enforcement, sending more letters, threatening fines, and legal action. The cops, who had been hesitant before, seemed more involved, responding to complaints and monitoring the situation closely. It felt like everything was coming to a head, but the outcome was far from clear. The conflict had grown beyond just a fight over lake access, was now about identity, control, and what kind of community we wanted to live in. And with that, the pressure to choose a side and the risk of losing everything became more real than ever. The tension finally exploded one afternoon when the HOA showed up with a legal notice in hand, demanding I pay fines for trespassing and threatening immediate action if I didn't join their association. I was prepared to stand my ground, but this time I wasn't alone. A handful of neighbors who had quietly supported me stepped forward, sharing their own stories about unfair fees and forced memberships. Suddenly, the conflict felt bigger. Wasn't just my fight anymore, it was about all of us who cared about the community and the lake. I called the cops again, not to escalate, but to have witnesses on site. When the HOA tried to enforce their demands right there by the lake, law enforcement made it clear that without a proper court order, it couldn't force me off land that was not legally private. The HOA's claims started to unravel in front of everyone, and their aggressive tactics lost some of their power. For the first time, I felt like the rules were shifting in our favor. But just when I thought the battle was won, an unexpected twist came to light. A local reporter who had been following the story uncovered that the HOA board members had significant financial interests tied to the proposed development on the lakefront. They weren't just protecting the community, they were planning to profit from turning the natural lake into a private resort, excluding longtime residents like me to drive up property values for their own gain. This revelation shook the neighborhood and sparked outrage among residents who felt betrayed by people. They trusted the HOA's plan to control the lake wasn't just about fees or memberships. It was a power grab masked as community management. With the truth exposed, the fight shifted again, this time into public scrutiny and legal challenges. While the lake access was temporarily safe, the future remained uncertain, and the story was far from over. The line between neighbor and adversary blurred, leaving us all wondering what would come next and whether we could really protect the place we all called home. After the reporter's story went public, everything changed. Suddenly, neighbors who had been silent found their voices, and more people started questioning the HOA's authority and motives. The local government stepped in to review the situation, and a few community meetings were held where residents could share their concerns. It wasn't easy, there was still a lot of distrust and frustration. But at least we were finally being heard. The HOA board faced serious scrutiny, and some members were forced to step down amid calls for transparency and fairness. The proposed development project on the lake was put on hold, giving us time to protect the natural space and rethink how our community should be managed. It was clear that people didn't want their neighborhood turned into a private resort or controlled by a few individuals looking to profit. For me, this whole experience was a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It showed how easy it is for power to be abused, but also how a group of determined neighbors can come together to make a difference. The lake, once a source of conflict, became a symbol of community resilience and the value of shared spaces that belong to everyone. Though the fight wasn't over in a legal sense, the momentum was on our side. More neighbors began attending meetings, volunteering, and staying informed. The future of the lake and our neighborhood felt a little less uncertain. What started as a simple dispute over lake access grew into a lesson about community, fairness, and the need to protect what matters most. If there's one thing to take away from this story, it's that sometimes standing firm isn't just about winning a fight. It's about protecting your home and your neighbors from those who try to take control without respect or fairness. And in the end, That's what truly builds a strong community.